Welcome everybody to GoLocal Live. I'm Josh Fenton, CEO and co-founder. A couple little pieces of news before we go to Bolzano, Italy. First up, an important story in GoLocal this morning, looking at nursing homes, the number of cases as well as the number of deaths. Finally, the Department of Health, after a lot of cajoling, decided to release all the information, or most of the information, related to the number of cases by nursing home. Previously, they were only reporting those that had 5 or more cases. When they released all the data, the number of nursing homes jumped from 20 to 31. A total of about 1,000 nursing home residents and assisted living residents combined have contracted the virus, and at some nursing homes, as many as in the 30s have passed away. So take a look at that story, it's an important one. Also, just a little political news, Steve Stikos, councilman at large in Cranston, who's running for mayor, was on with us yesterday on GoLocal Live, and he announced he's put together already $60,000 in both a loan from himself to his campaign as well as fundraising. That puts him right in the game there in Cranston. An interesting story, a significant election that everybody should take a look at as Mayor Alan Funk gets term limited out. Let's go to Bolzano, Italy. I feel like our correspondent on the front line, Rebecca Couto da Silva, she joins us every Friday. Rebecca, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
So you know, we look to Italy because you're a few weeks ahead of us. One of the things we look at is how the number of cases are developing, as well as unfortunately the death count. Death count has exceeded 25,000 now. And the cases are coming down as well as the deaths are coming down, but it's not coming down, it's slowly moving down. What's the feeling there in Italy about how things are developing?
Yeah, it's one of those things that I think you kind of think, oh, it's just going to be this hill, like a parabola, right? And no, it's a plane.
Difficult,
and
stressful.
So it's really hard because you see, the numbers aren't necessarily, first of all, there's not necessarily enough testing, but the numbers are not, you've got the death numbers that are, they kind of have about 5 days at a certain rate, then they'll go down by about 50, or 5 days at the new rate and then down by 50. And that's really hard because you're like, my gosh, every 2 days there's still about 1,000 people dying, and that's a lot. But then the number of new infections, we know that in 3 weeks we won't have this number of people dying, and we're going to see if opening up society again is going to work, or how it's going to work. So it's nice to see that the number of infections has gone so low, especially compared with the number of discharges. Like, there's space in the hospital in Bergamo now. That's amazing.
The country starts to roll back the lockdown in about 10 days, correct?
Yeah, May 4th, Monday, I think, is the phase 2. But there have been little steps sort of every Monday, either at the regional levels or countrywide. So, as I mentioned earlier, our region was allowed to go for runs again. Right. And then some cities said, not everywhere, but the more rural places like where I live were allowed to go. And then little industry, like not little industries, but an industry or two, a small number of industries will get opened up every week. So auto manufacturing might go on Monday, I think I heard, and plane manufacturing. So there are movements to get people back to work, especially because if people aren't at work, they're at risk to traveling all over the country in a small train car.
Right. How is life? You and your daughter are there in Bolzano. You're in that small village just outside the city itself. Talk about life on a day-to-day basis, educating your daughter. How are those things going?
Yeah, it was great. This week we both had a call with her teacher, so they're checking in. Really, really great, caring professionals at her school. They really want to know how everything's going. They're going to start video conferencing next week. Well, we gave the permission yesterday, And so we should have video conferencing information soon. So that's going to be great. It takes a little bit off of me, especially because her work is mostly in Italian and German, and the English she can handle, right? So like, oh, thank goodness I don't have to understand this math and German. And the math is really, really hard. I finished calculus when I was 16 years old, and I am looking at all past versions of a standardized test that I have to minister to her today or tomorrow. And oh my gosh, like I posted one of the questions from an old test on Facebook, and a lot of people said, no, that can't be the right answer. Like the right answer can't be the right answer.
Now, just for reference, you did attend Stanford as well as law school, and you are getting your doctorate there in Italy. This is not like you just fell off the vegetable truck.
Right, my master's, but I am applying to PhD programs now. So this Austrian math is I'm happy that she's going through it, but it's very challenging. I was really humbled by how much a 10-year-old is supposed to know.
How has the vigilance of the education process, coupled with her Harry Potter reading, working, juxtaposing with one another?
Harry Potter slowed down a little bit because we discovered something that everyone in America has known about for quite some time, and that's Once Upon a Time. So that's right in her sort of, the 10-year-old brain is very into not just the fairy tales as they're presented in this nice, clean way, but in other ways and other interpretations. Not quite ready for Grimm, but Once Upon a Time. So I've been letting her binge a little bit on that.
That's great. Day-to-day life, supplies are still there in the community, no food shortages. Are German chocolates back?
I'm actually not allowed to go down to the city at this time for something that I could get in the village. The village has its supply, but not for €1 a piece, €1.50 a piece, which is why there were none before. But yeah, supplies are fine. Prices have gone up on some things. So broccoli, for example, was something like €7 a kilo. And now here we go with my brain, but that's very expensive. €7.
Is there any sense that there's price gouging, or is it just the natural supply and demand of the lockdown?
No. Price gouging would be pretty swiftly by supermarket, by an official market, would be pretty swiftly taken care of. It's not really allowed. It was even actually the owner of the market. I said, "Oh, how about some broccoli?" And she said, "It's pretty expensive today." I said, "Okay, I'll get zucchini instead." So the zucchini was the €160 per kilo, and then broccoli was $7, which is just like, that's really expensive. So yeah, there are some things that people are just buying, and also some things that are easier to grow in the winter than others under the tents, and getting stuff here. I mean, they're not gouging us. They're paying trucks to come up with the food all the time, and it's a 20-minute drive from the city of Bolzano. Food doesn't necessarily originate in Bolzano, but it goes through there, so you can see that that's an issue.
I would pay €10 not to have Brussels sprouts, so I want that on the record. Let's jump to, how do people perceive the government, the national government, during this period of time?
Yeah, as the weather gets more beautiful, as things seem safer, I think there is a tendency to be like, oh God, enough is enough. There's a general acceptance of these measures are here to save lives. I think, I don't want to necessarily use the word helps, but it does help that we saw such devastation, so we know what coronavirus can do in Italy. And we know that the devastation that we saw in March was because of the lack of controls in February. So people do have that awareness. I think that being in lockdown for so long, people just want to get out. We want the draft of the new order. People like me who do contact sports know that we're not going to be able to do sports. Runners know that they will be able to do sports countrywide on May 4th is sort of the rumor. So really the issue is, can you play tennis, right? Can you play certain sports that are on the borderline? Now that it is about 10 days away, I think there is some more patience. But again, there are 2 holidays in those 10 days. It's expected to be gorgeous this weekend. We've had high 70s, mid 70s every day, and we're in the mountains, and that's nice. It would be oppressive to be inside down in the valley and in the south of the country.
So much of different areas of Italy, tourism is such a critical part of the economy. The southern regions, Positano, Capri, Venice, Florence, Rome. What's the expectation of any tourism, and what's the expectation of, because there will be less tourism, what the economic impact is going to be?
Yeah, billions of losses. What's going on now is that the country's faced with a lot of losses, and they're trying to figure out how can we minimize these losses without spiking the number of people that are at risk, that are infected, needing urgent care. So it's really tough right now. It is, oh gosh, we're going to suffer billions of dollars of losses as a country. There's wrangling in the EU and in the international institutions about if aid should go to countries, what type of aid should go to countries. There's been a pretty public spat between Italy and Germany. So.
Well, that's new.
Yeah. 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 Tomorrow we celebrate the liberation from the Nazi regime, April 25th. So it's, getting on there.
Germany has announced, Munich specifically has announced, they've already canceled Oktoberfest, which seems a dire announcement for a return to significant normalcy in Europe or anywhere else in the world. What's your thoughts on that? And is that same tone taking place in Italy, that there's no return to normalcy for a significant period of time?
Yeah, I think that the canceling of Oktoberfest was pretty shocking. Whether the people at the top in charge of Italy have the same timeline in mind, that hasn't necessarily been shared with us. So to hear Munich cancel Oktoberfest was a big slap, like, whoa. On the other hand, Italy is looking at an app that operates with Bluetooth, a contagion tracking app. And there are European privacy norms and Italian privacy norms, but mostly they come from the EU. And so it's going to be Bluetooth based, so that it tells you there's no geolocation involved, but it would alert you when you're near somebody, when you're near a device of somebody who has a positive serum or something like that. So they've selected a vendor for the app. And I think that Italy, what we're hearing is that Italy is going to use the app to try to get to normalcy. And we also know that Bavaria has been really, really strict. I believe it was one of the strictest German states with all the rules. It was one of the reasons that people couldn't get to Italy, is that if you wanted to go by train or by bus, you couldn't pass through Bavaria. So, Bavaria is known to be strict. And the talk now is about our app and maybe contact sports by the summer. We don't know. So that was a little scary. The numbers we're getting from Italian authorities are also scary, but we're going to hear more over the weekend. There's been promise of drafts and decisions over the weekend, so we'll see.
Soccer, is there discussion about bringing soccer back? Last September, I went to a match at AC Roma at Olympic Stadium. It's one of those things you don't forget. Italians are so embedded in their soccer. Is there discussions about bringing it back either with fans or without fans?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's a contact sport, so the difference between professional like right now they're just sort of trying to get a hold of economically those industries, but they're looking at sports. I think after the decisions of this weekend, we'll hear about that. It is something that, people want soccer, but then it's on the other hand, so many soccer players got infected, and you can't play soccer at a distance, and you can't be in a crowd at a distance, and it's just different watching it on TV. So we'll see. It's definitely the Italian experience, and everyone wants it back as soon as it's safe. So hopefully, maybe they'll have different rules also for professional and Olympic athletes that do contact sports, but pretty much everyone's been together from amateur to professional. It's not the level of the sport, it's the kind of the sport, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them think about that a little bit more.
Now, I have an economic question for you, and you don't have to answer this. You're an American in Italy. They're talking about a 600 euro payment to everyone in the EU, but you're an American. Did you get your stimulus payment from the US government, or will you get a stimulus payment from the EU, or will you be lucky enough to get both?
Yeah, we haven't received the American one yet, and I have a complicated home address with dashes, and so I think it's going to be one of those ones where if I can't get them the direct deposit, I try 3 times a day with a variation of my address. So we'll see what's going on there. But in terms of the Italian one, I haven't applied for it. I wouldn't take it. If it shows up at my door, I'd even ask what I could do with it, because when you're on a student visa, you're contributing in a lot of ways to the economy. You're paying your taxes on certain food. Your landlord will pay the property taxes on your property, but I'm not necessarily paying an income tax. So I wouldn't feel, even if I would have to eat half of what I ate for a while, and I've been very careful. I've actually been budgeting food, but it's one of those things where I, as someone who hasn't participated in giving up part of my earnings tax, I would not feel comfortable taking the 600 euro stimulus from a country that's hosting me so that I can get a degree.
Rebecca, high moral standards. That's why we like you as our virtual Italian correspondent. Thank you so much. I do hope your American stimulus checks finds its way across the Atlantic. And thank you, as always, for joining us. For everybody else, 12 noon, we will have Dr. Michael Fine talking about a number of major issues, including maybe a little bit about President Trump's discussion about using commercial and residential cleaners to fight back against the coronavirus. And then at 2:30, not 1 o'clock, it's been bumped to 2:30, Governor Raimondo will have her briefing. Again, she continues to not allow journalists to ask direct questions or follow-up questions when the public can hear it. Rebecca, thank you so much. Please stay safe. For everyone else, we'll see you back at 12 o'clock. Thank you so much. Please stay safe.